So this isn't just a song. It is a haunting diagnosis of a civilization slowly losing its mind. And a massive thank you for the immense generosity for those folks displayed on screen who get to enjoy bonus perks and benefits as YouTube channel members and patrons. Oh, beautiful guitar work.
The preacher sins on Sunday morning.
Okay, wow.
The sheriff steps outside the law.
Wasted no time with the profundity.
The teachers don't know much at all. And
oh,
it's all the same. Empires rise and empires fall.
Oh. Wow, he just went straight into it. Bloody hell. Okay, I want to dive deeper into that because it was very profound very early on up front. So yeah, here we go. What I love is that he just gets straight into it. Ren wastes no time in dismantling the illusion that authority is synonymous with virtue. Each figure he invokes, whether it be the preacher, the sheriff, the teacher, all of them represent an institution upon which society traditionally anchors its moral compass. You know, things like religion, justice, education. Yet every one of them is revealed as deeply fallible, as, you know, we've experienced. What I do like here is when you take a look at the lyrics, the preacher sins on Sunday morning. Now, that is a devastating paradox, and it's exposing the hypocrisy of those who preach righteousness whilst privately succumbing to the very frailties that they condemn. And another one, the sheriff steps outside the law. Now, that extends that indictment to injustice itself, and it's suggesting that those entrusted with enforcing order are equally capable of corruption. Then comes perhaps the most tragic line, the teachers don't know much at all. So for me, that hit home a bit, because this is not merely a criticism of educators, but an acknowledgement of humanity's collective limitations. Even those charged with illuminating minds are themselves navigating uncertainty, which is understandable, and it's possessing no monopoly on truth. So Ren culminates this opening meditation with remarkable, and I really do mean remarkable, philosophical breadth. So, for example, it's all the same, empires rise and empires fall. So in an instant, he zooms out from individual hypocrisy to the inexorable cycles of civilization itself. And whether it is kingdoms, governments, ideologies, and institutions, all of them, and I really do mean all of them, they imagine themselves permanent. Yet, when you look at history, it's a reminder to us that every empire eventually crumbles beneath the weight of its own imperfections. It's a very stoic, well, it's profoundly stoic as an observation, that corruption is neither new nor exceptional, but it's woven into the recurring rhythm of human history. So rather than presenting isolated failings, Ren just paints them as symptoms of an enduring condition, and that is a civilization forever convinced it has transcended the mistakes of its own predecessor. And all we are left with is the discovery that humanity remains exquisitely, tragically unchanged. All right, really good start from Ren. If we get more lines like that, I'm going to be pausing a lot. Apologies in advance.
Same empires rise and empires
Great intonation, nice tone.
As we wander through the darkness, will die upon this hill.
Oh.
And the only pill to swallow is the one that made you ill. In this virtual reality, it's hard to see what's real.
Wow.
There's something left worth saving, I'm holding on to still.
These lyrics, my giddy aunt. Bloody hell. Okay, it seems like I'm going to be pausing a lot, and this may end up being a very, very long video, so strap in, ladies and gentlemen. You know, just listening to this for the first time, I think I might have to go through every line, because here, this section feels like the emotional and philosophical nucleus of everything that came before in the first verse. So notice how Ren shifts from exposing the failings of society to implicating every one of us within that same landscape. So he goes on to sing, "As we wander through the darkness, we'll die upon this hill." Now, that evokes an image of humanity sort of stubbornly defending its own convictions, even when those convictions ultimately lead to self-destruction. And again, very stoic and profound philosophical storytelling. The phrase, "die upon this hill," it just brilliantly borrows an idiom of unwavering belief and transforming it into a lament for our collective inability to relinquish the ideologies, tribalism, and prejudices that just keep us perpetually at war with one another. And then comes this wonderfully unsettling paradox, right? And the only pill to swallow is the one that makes you ill. So the truth, as Ren puts it, is rarely comforting. It's genuine self-awareness that demands that we ingest difficult realities about ourselves, about our institutions, and the world that we inhabit. It is medicine like poison, because when you think of it, growth so often begins with discomfort rather than reassurance. All of us have experienced that at some point in our lives. And then Ren takes that a step further in the very next line. In this virtual reality, it's hard to see what's real. And that broadens the canvas still even further. Because speaking not merely to digital existence, but to the overwhelming torment of our own narratives, algorithms, media, and carefully curated identities that blur the distinction between authenticity and illusion. So, looking from the outside, going back in, it's in an age where perception is endlessly manufactured. Certainty becomes an increasingly elusive commodity. Yet, despite this almost dystopian portrait, Ren refuses to surrender entirely to nihilism. There's something left worth saving I'm holding on to still. Now that is I would say the solitary candle flickering against an encroaching darkness. It is an extraordinary admission that hope is not born from ignorance of the world's flaws, but it is from choosing to preserve one's faith in humanity despite having witnessed them. And I think, for me personally, looking at this, that final sentiment transforms the entire passage from mere social criticism into something quietly heroic. It's a declaration that resilience is perhaps the most radical act of all. Okay, let's keep it going. I am already quite gobsmacked by this. So here we go.
Nothing left worth saving, I'm holding on to still. The doctor is your local dealer.
Oh, buggering hell.
The banker cuts himself a check.
Absolutely brilliant.
The politician you believe in is never around, just empty promises and debt.
This is one of those songs. Right. Okay. I'm gonna have an absolute bloody field day with this. Let's look into it. This song is unbelievably special. Ren continues his unflinching deconstruction of the institutions upon which society places its faith. It is fascinating that he doesn't attack individuals as much as he interrogates the system they represent. So the doctor is your local dealer. Now that's intentionally jarring, right? It's drawing a provocative parallel between medicine and commerce. It speaks to the uncomfortable reality that healthcare, in some contexts, let me be clear, can become intertwined with profit, where prescriptions risk becoming transactions and relief can foster dependency as, well, I mean, it's just as readily as recovery. Ren, though, I want to be clear, isn't condemning the medical profession wholesale. Rather, he is exposing the tension that arises when healing exists within a commercial framework. And that's quite profound, a very astute observation from the GOAT. And the next line, the banker cuts himself a check. Now that is equally economical in its wording, yet it's devastating in its implication. In just a handful of words, he encapsulates the perception of financial institutions that reward those at the top while leaving ordinary people to absorb the consequence of economic stability, or instability, sorry. So there is a biting irony in the image of someone entrusted with safeguarding wealth appearing to prioritize personal enrichment instead. And I mean, that could be said of the political realm as well. And I think the final couplet was probably the most devastating for me. The politician you believe in is never around, just empty promises and debt. Now, doesn't that just carry a profound sense of disillusionment? Hope, Ren conveys it, has become a campaign slogan rather than a governing principle. And we know this all too well. Politicians arrive adorned with rhetoric and aspiration only to disappear behind bureaucracy, leaving us as the citizens with little more than unfulfilled pledges and burdens to bear. And I think what elevates this verse is its remarkable structural symmetry. And what I mean by that is, just as in the opening verses, Ren presents a sequence of trusted archetypes before exposing the contradiction beneath each one. And what he does is that he is creating an almost relentless cadence of collapsing ideals. And it feels less like a collection of isolated grievances and more like a poetic audit of a civilization whose foundational pillars have begun to crack. And it's leaving us as the listeners to wonder where the real crisis lies, not in individual failings, but in the very architecture of the systems we've been taught to trust. A lot of long-winded exposition from me, I do apologize, but I mean, look at the lyrics. So here we go. Let's keep it going.
Around just empty promises and that.
Love the simplicity of his vocal.
As we wander through the darkness, we'll die upon this hill, and the only pill to swallow is the one that made you ill. In this virtual reality, it's hard to see what's real. There's something left worth saving that hasn't yet been killed. Where do we go when bound by the chains? When the tide gets low, I wait for the wave. Still I learn to let go with hope for change. When the world is an asylum, how do you stay safe?
Okay, let's take a look at the lyrics. I just had to compose myself there for a second. This chorus, I already said nucleus, but I would say it's the emotional and philosophical heartbeat of the entire composition thus far. So after verses steeped in disillusionment and institutional decay, Ren now turns the lens inward, and he's posing questions that are not rhetorical flourishes, but deeply human cries for orientation. And he phrases it like this: where do we go when bound by the chains? Now that immediately, it just establishes a sense of captivity. And I mean, I have to think about it. Even though the beauty of the lyric lies in its ambiguity, you see, those chains may be psychological, societal, or ideological, or even self-forged through trauma and fear. But Ren deliberately leaves them undefined because they are unique to each listener, and it's making the question feel profoundly open and universal. Another thing, when the tide gets low, I'll wait for the waves. Now that introduces a striking maritime metaphor that offers the first genuine glimpse of resilience. Low tide is never permanent. It is simply one phrase within a greater rhythm. So rather than resisting the ebb, Ren chooses patience, trusting that movement will inevitably return. It's mature writing, right? It's because it's angling towards hope, not the naive belief that suffering will simply vanish, but the quiet confidence that the seasons of hardship are transient. In other words, they will come to an end. Then comes perhaps the chorus's most quietly courageous admission. And it's this: and still I learn to go with hope for change. The inclusion of learn, I think, is vital, because letting go is not portrayed as instantaneous revelation, but as a discipline, an ongoing act of surrender that requires humility and perseverance. Now that, I think, recontextualizes the ethic of hope, because it is not presented as passive optimism, but as an active choice made in spite of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Finally, towards the end, Ren delivers the song's defining question, right? When the world is an asylum, how do you stay sane? It's an astonishing inversion of perspective. So rather than asking whether the individual is broken, he is now asking whether it is possible to remain psychologically whole within a society that often appears, irrational, chaotic, and self-destructive. So the metaphor of the world as an asylum suggests a place where disorder has become the norm, where confusion masquerades as certainty and dysfunction is mistaken for progress. It's unbelievable writing. And yet what resonates so deeply is that Ren never claims to possess the answer. Instead, he's inviting us into the question itself, and it allows for the chorus to become less a declaration and more a shared meditation on the fragile, often arduous pursuit of clarity, hope, and humanity. And amidst the deafening cacophony of modern existence, that's important. Okay, I'm expecting Chris Webby to come in sometime soon, but bloody hell, Ren. Well done, lad. Outstanding.
Yeah, the times change, but it's still the same thing, played out on a constant loop. As the wars wage on the centerfold stage, and the storyline's nothing new.
Brilliant.
While we draw lines in the sand decided by the chosen few, just for something to believe in, anything will do. And we throw spears over counterfeit fears while the kings and queens all watch.
Wow.
Brothers shed tears, but it falls on deaf ears in a land that God forgot.
Wow.
Still we thread hard through the hangman's rope and lose sight of what was lost. All for something to believe in, but was it worth the cost?
Jeez, Webby. That was unbelievable. Okay, you best believe I'm going to absolutely analyze the buggering shit out of this. Okay, so now we come to Chris Webby. By the way, massive shout out to Chris Webby. He commented on my last reaction video of Inpatient. So grateful that he actually watched and took the time to comment. And thank you to everyone who supported that video and liked his comment. I was absolutely over the moon. I couldn't thank you lot any more than I could. But anyway, moving on. As Chris Webby enters, I would say his passage, there is a palpable shift in texture, right? REN wrote often feeling introspective and philosophical, whereas Webby arrives with the cadence of a social commentator. And what he does is that he is broadening the song's scope until it encompasses the entire theater of human civilization. So, for example, the times change, but it's still the same thing played out on a constant loop. Now, that immediately established history as cyclical rather than progressive. So, in other words, we convince ourselves that we inhabit an enlightened age, yet the same conflicts, divisions, and ambitions simply don new disguises. And I like the following image that he conveyed. The wars wage on the centerfold stage. Now, that is particularly incisive because it's transforming global conflict into a grotesque spectacle. The phrase evokes both political theater and media sensationalism, and it's suggesting that war has become something consumed almost as entertainment. Now, I want to be clear. It's horrors flattened into headlines whilst the underlying narrative remains tragically repetitive. And the next line, while we draw lines in the sand decided by the chosen few. Again, equally poignant. It's exposing how the divisions that ordinary people like you and I fiercely defend are so often conceived by those that are so far removed from the consequences themselves. Borders, ideologies, and allegiances become inherited battlegrounds. And it's leaving us as the individuals to fight over identities and causes they never truly authored. And that refrain that is used just for something to believe in, anything will do. So devastating. Because it speaks to one of humanity's deepest instincts, and it's this: our desperate hunger for meaning. When certainty becomes scarce, almost any ideology can become seductive, regardless of its truth. And I think society can learn a lot from the song. I feel like I'm going through every single line of the song, but honestly, I think it deserves it. So moving on to the second half of the verse, it intensifies that tragedy with extraordinary poetic economy. Now, we throw spears over counterfeit fears while the kings and queens all watch. Great rhyme scheme, by the way. I think that line is a magnificent metaphor for manufactured conflict. The counterfeit fears are especially significant. They are not imaginary, but fabricated, constructed narratives that just provoke division whilst those in positions of power remain detached in a way. And observing the chaos from a place of security, which, I mean, I have my own opinions about that, it is an image as ancient as monarchy and as contemporary as modern geopolitics. So brothers shed tears, but it falls on deaf ears in a land that God forgot. Now that introduces profound spiritual desolation. I don't think it's necessarily asserting divine abandonment, but I do think Chris Webby is expressing what it feels like to inhabit a world where suffering appears unanswered and compassion increasingly scarce. So after that, what appears is perhaps the verse's most haunting image. Still we thread hope through the hangman's rope. breathtaking poetry. Excellent from Chris Webby. The hangman's rope is an emblem of death, judgment, and despair, right? Yet Webby imagines hope being woven through its very fibers, suggesting that even amidst our darkest impulses, humanity remains incapable of relinquishing its yearning for redemption. Well, however, that hope is tempered by one closing question, right? All for something to believe in, but was it worth the cost? In other words, he's saying there's no triumph here, only solemn reflection. It challenges us to consider the immeasurable price paid in pursuit of ideologies, nations, religions, and identities. And he is asking, well, at least from my interpretation, whether our relentless search for belonging has too often demanded the sacrifice of our own shared humanity. Personally, I think it is a verse that refuses simplistic answers. So instead of confronting us with the uncomfortable possibility that the greatest battles we wage are not against one another, but against the stories we choose to believe. Okay, a lot of exposition for this brilliant work of art. This is, honestly, it's my favorite on the album. Personal preference. The lyrics just, it hits somewhere different in my brain. So, there was this quote by Shakespeare. I can't remember from where. If love is the food of music, let it play on. So let's do just that.
Something to believe in, but was it worth
Outstanding,
the cost?
Chris.
As we wander through the darkness, we'll die upon this hill, and the only pill to swallow.
This chorus is
the
unbelievable,
one
by the
that
way.
makes us ill. In this virtual reality, it's hard to see what's real. There's something left worth saving that hasn't yet been killed. Where do we go? We're bound by the chains. When the tide gets low, I wait for the wave. Still I know to let go with hope for change. When the world is an asylum, how do you stay sane?
I love this music video. It's ordinary people. And essentially, this is their song. I would classify this as the song of the people.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. Shalom.
Oh, that's interesting.
Shalom, shalom. In the dying of the light, there's a chance to be reborn. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
Ooh. Oh, what a song. Oh, man. Okay. Sorry, I'm thinking. Okay. I think I get it. Let us continue listening to one of the best songs I've ever heard, never mind on this channel, in my whole life. On the brink of tears here, but what a message. What a message. These two have... Oh, okay.
Hold on. A mother reaches for the needle. A baby's lost before it wakes.
Oh.
Without guidance for the people, it's all the same. Walls are built, walls will break.
Yes. Oh. I very rarely make a comment like this, but that song was perfect. It was audificated perfection. Okay, so we've just listened to the bridge, right? And it feels like a moment of quiet transcendence amid the song's relentless unrest. So the repetition of "hold on" becomes more than encouragement. I believe it is a lifeline urging perseverance when despair feels overwhelming. And then comes a word that I didn't expect, shalom, which is a word far richer than simply peace. It speaks of wholeness, restoration, and reconciliation. So that is coupled with, in the dying of the light, there's a chance to be reborn. And this is sung by REN. And REN, I think, is offering a profound paradox, that endings are not merely losses, but the very soil from which renewal can emerge. It is hope whispered rather than shouted. To borrow the common parlance of modern society, in other words, slang, REN and Webby cooked. This song is, I think, in my opinion, the best song on the album. Really, because now it's all come full circle, right? And it's distilling its sweeping social critique into a profound human tragedy. A mother reaches for the needle. So that speaks to addiction not as moral failure, but as desperation, while a baby's lost before it wakes, breathtakingly symbolic of innocence extinguished before life has truly begun. So REN then returns to the need for moral and compassionate leadership. And I think he's suggesting that without guidance, society is condemned to repeat its mistakes. And the closing line, walls build, walls will break, encapsulates that endless historic cycle: division, collapse, and reconstruction. And that's reminding us that unless humanity itself changes, the pattern simply begins anew. This was a tough song, not because it was difficult to interpret, but because the message had a gravitational weight to it that was so overwhelming. I had to go through as many lines of the song as I could. Unbelievable from REN and Chris Webby. I could have easily gone an hour and a half, 2 hours with this, but there you go. That's all from me, folks. I want to thank you ever so much for watching. Please do like, comment, subscribe if you found the video worthwhile. And thank you once again to everyone who has supported the channel thus far. I have no words, really. This channel has grown more over the past month than it has in the past 3 months. So really, I don't have the words other than just to say thank you. If you would like to support the channel in a different way, you can do so via the links in the description below. My Patreon, PayPal, super thanks, becoming a YouTube channel member, all of it is available in the description below. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, do be kind, do be gentle, do be respectful to one another, and help each other out when you can. And I'll see you lot in the next video. Take care, everyone. Cheers.